Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the incredibly fascinating psychology behind online storytelling and, well, engagement traps. Have you ever just caught yourself staring at a seemingly simple post on your feed and suddenly it's completely hijacked your attention? Like you were absolutely desperate to know what happens next? Well, today, we're going to break down the exact anatomy of a digital cliffhanger. We're going to explore how structure and emotion are literally weaponized just to get your clicks. So, what really makes us click? I want you to just stop and ponder that for a second. Think about the exact psychological triggers that practically force us to engage with and ultimately click on digital content. Because honestly, it's almost never an accident. It's usually the result of a really carefully constructed trap, one that plays on our deepest, most hardwired human desires for narrative closure. And today, we're going to look under the hood to see exactly how this is done. To really get a grip on this, we're looking at a very specific piece of source material today. Now, I'm introducing this to you not as some grand piece of classic literature. No, this is a highly engineered artifact designed specifically to manipulate your psychological. On the surface, this image, titled The Power of Never Giving Up, well, it just looks like a wholesome little fable, right? But as you'll see when we break down its components, it is actually a total masterclass in digital bait. Moving to Section 1, Anatomy of an Underdog. Let's look at the setup. Let's see exactly how this builds into a really compelling narrative trap. We need to look closely at how fast this tiny little block of text establishes conflict and emotional stakes. So, the underdog setup. In just a handful of sentences, the author fires off the essential building blocks of a classic hero's journey. We've got our protagonist, a young boy named Sam. We've got our setting, a small village. We've got his passion. He loved running every day in the fields. And, crucially, we have our antagonist, the other boys who always laughed at him. Notice how the author uses these super simple, concise sentences here? It's kind of brilliant, actually, because it completely removes any cognitive friction. It lets you, the reader, build an immediate emotional bond with Sam in a matter of literally seconds. Now, what's really interesting here is how this establishes the core conflict of the entire narrative using just a few words directly from the source. On one side, we have Sam's dream, to win a big race in the city. And on the other side, the harsh, blunt reality. Sam was not fast. This, right here, this is the engine of our story. That massive gap between what Sam deeply, desperately wants and what Sam is physically capable of, that is precisely what hooks our empathy and keeps us reading. On to Section 2, the inevitable defeat, the downward spiral. Our story moves super fast from that initial hopeful setup to a carefully paced inciting incident. Honestly, this event is practically designed in a psychological laboratory just to crush our young protagonist's spirit. It brilliantly illustrates a downward emotional spiral. Just look at this chronological sequence of Sam's devastating failure. Step 1, he bravely joined a small race in his village. Step 2, he ran as fast as he could, giving it his absolute all. Step 3, he came last. Step 4, people laughed and told him to stop. Ouch, right? This isn't just a loss, it's a public humiliation. The author is methodically stacking the emotional weights onto this young character to make us feel deeply, personally invested in his pain. Let's look at the exact words they used against him. Sam, running is not for you. You should stop. By putting the harsh words of the villagers in giant text, we're basically forced to feel the engineered emotional low point that the author is actively trying to create. It's brutal, it's direct, and it cuts right to the core of this kid's entire identity. And naturally, the external conflict from the villagers seamlessly transitions right into internal doubt. Sam thinks to himself, maybe they are right, maybe I should stop. This perfectly executes that classic narrative beat, the one known in screenwriting as the all is lost moment. The hero has accepted defeat. We, the audience, are totally feeling the sting of his failure. At this point, we are right in the palm of the author's hand, desperately wanting someone, anyone, to swoop in and save this poor kid. Which brings us to Section 3. Enter the mentor, a glimmer of hope. Okay, so let's dive into this pivotal moment where hope is suddenly reintroduced to the narrative, right at the point of maximum despair. The text reads, "But that night, his grandfather came to him." This is textbook storytelling architecture, guys. We're looking at the introduction of the grandfather, the classic mentor archetype. Think of characters like Yoda or Mr. Miyagi. The wise elder arrives precisely on cue to deliver some profound, life-altering wisdom to our broken protagonist. We, as the reader, are practically holding our breath, just waiting for the inspirational advice that's going to finally turn Sam's life around. But actually, before we hear that wisdom, let's take a brief moment to point out the tasteful humor of the source image's artwork itself. Look at this illustration at the top of the artifact. It's a panicked boy fleeing a very aggressive goose. It delightfully contrasts the heavy, almost existential emotional weight of Sam's despair that we literally just read about. The whimsical, kind of chaotic energy of this illustration lulls us into a false sense of security. It's totally disarming, which, as you'll see, makes the trap that is about to spring even more effective.
Section 4. The clickbait cliffhanger. The trap springs.
Let's shift our focus for a second to the jarring structural turn this artifact takes, right as we approach the promised climax of the story. The literal definition of a cliffhanger in this context is perfectly captured in just two simple words from our source. He said, followed by a comma, and then nothing. Just nothing. The story abruptly ends mid-sentence. We've been psychologically primed for a massive emotional revelation, only to have the narrative floor completely drop out from right under us. And here is the true reveal. The bright red text at the bottom of the image. If you want to watch full video, click on link. Suddenly, the entire emotional journey we just went on is exposed as a crude digital marketing funnel. We weren't reading a heartwarming story at all. We were walking blindfolded into a psychological snare. So, the crucial point here is the sheer dramatic irony on display. Look at this hilarious contrast. On one side, we have the anticipated profound mentorship of the grandfather, the big narrative payoff we really feel like we've earned as readers. And on the other side, we have the brightly colored, boldly misspelled demand for a click, video. The grand illusion of immersive storytelling is just instantly shattered by a typo-ridden, capitalistic call to action. It's almost funny, right? Let's summarize the exact mechanics of the trap we've just deconstructed here, because in roughly 100 words, this artifact manages to sequentially build immediate emotional investment, engineer an all-is-lost moment, promise a resolution via a mentor, abruptly withhold that exact resolution, and finally demand an action, clicking the link. It is a masterful, if maybe a slightly cynical, manipulation of our basic human desire for narrative closure. See, the human brain absolutely hates unfinished patterns, and this trap weaponizes that instinct perfectly. Which leaves us with one final, really provocative thought. Knowing all of this, seeing the psychological mechanics laid completely bare, would you click? I mean, sure, we might laugh at the spelling mistake and we might recognize the manipulation for what it is, but the psychological itch has already been created. Are we truly immune to these narrative traps, or are we all just as susceptible to the power of a digital cliffhanger as anyone else? Well, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it helps you navigate your digital feeds with a slightly sharper eye, and I'll see you next time.